I never imagined that I would one day be in a remote part of China, standing by the shores of Lake Tianchi, watching something so unbelievable that it would make headlines around the world. But there I was, a reporter from the United States, drawn to this place by rumors of a mysterious creature said to lurk in the depths of the lake. My journey to Lake Tianchi began when I stumbled upon a small article buried in the back pages of an international newspaper. The story was brief, almost dismissive, but it mentioned that some locals had claimed to see a strange creature in the lake. Intrigued, I began researching and discovered that these reports had been circulating for years. Some people described a serpent-like beast, while others spoke of something much larger, with a long neck and a huge body. The more I read, the more fascinated I became. I knew I had to see it for myself. When I arrived in the small town near Lake Tianchi, I could feel the excitement in the air. The townspeople were friendly but wary. They were used to outsiders coming in, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, only to leave disappointed. I checked into a small inn, run by an elderly couple who had lived there their entire lives. The woman, Mrs. Zhang, was eager to talk about the monster. "You know, people have seen it," she said as she poured me a cup of tea. "My husband saw it once, many years ago. He was fishing on the lake, and something huge surfaced, making waves as big as a house. He was so frightened he dropped his fishing rod and rowed back to shore as fast as he could." Her husband, Mr. Zhang, nodded solemnly. It was real. Not a shadow or a trick of the light. It was big, bigger than anything I've ever seen in my life. It had eyes that glowed like lanterns, and it moved so quickly, it was gone in an instant. I could tell they believed what they were saying, but I was still skeptical. As much as I wanted to believe in the monster, I needed proof. So, I decided to stay for a few days and see if I could catch a glimpse of the creature myself. The next morning, I set out early with my camera and notebook, determined to find someone who had recently seen the monster. I walked through the town, stopping to talk to anyone who would share their story. Most of the people I spoke to were shy, reluctant to say too much. But then I met a young couple, Li Wei and Mei Ling, who had seen the creature just a few days earlier. "We were walking along the shore, just enjoying the sunset," Li Wei said. "It was so peaceful, and the water was calm. Then, all of a sudden, we saw something moving in the distance. At first, we thought it was just a large fish, but then it got closer, and we realized it was something much bigger." Mei Ling nodded, her eyes wide with the memory. "It was huge, like a giant snake or a dragon. It had a long neck and a body that stretched out behind it. We watched it for a few seconds, and then it dove under the water and disappeared." I could hear the fear in their voices, but also a sense of wonder. They had seen something extraordinary, something that few people ever get to witness. I thanked them for their time and continued my search, but as the day wore on, I began to wonder if I would ever see the creature myself. As evening approached, I made my way back to the lake. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water. The surface of the lake was smooth, like a mirror, reflecting the mountains that surrounded it. I found a quiet spot and sat down, my camera ready, hoping that the monster would make an appearance. For a long time, nothing happened. The sky grew darker, and the stars began to twinkle above me. I was about to give up and head back to the inn when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was just a ripple on the water, but then it happened again. And then I saw it. Something breaking the surface of the lake. It was far away, too far to see clearly, but I could make out the shape of a large, dark figure moving slowly through the water. My heart began to race as I watched it glide across the lake, leaving a trail of ripples in its wake. I fumbled with my camera, trying to zoom in, but the creature was moving too quickly. Before I could take a clear picture, it dove under the water and vanished. I sat there for a moment, stunned by what I had just seen. It had happened so fast, and yet it was real. The monster of Lake Tianchi was real. I felt a mix of emotions, excitement, fear, and a sense of awe. I had come here hoping to find the truth, and now that I had seen it with my own eyes, I wasn't sure what to do next. The next morning, I shared my experience with the townspeople. Some were thrilled that an outsider had finally seen the creature, while others remained skeptical, thinking I might have just seen a large fish or some other animal. But I knew what I had seen. It wasn't just a fish. It was something much bigger, something that didn't belong in any ordinary lake. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still so much more to discover about Lake Tianchi and its mysterious inhabitant. I had only caught a glimpse of the creature, but that was enough to convince me that the stories were true. On my flight back to the United States, I thought about how I would write the story. It wasn't just about a monster. It was about a place steeped in mystery and legend, a place where the line between reality and myth blurred. I knew that some people would believe me, while others would scoff, but that didn't matter. I had seen the monster, and that was enough for me. Even now, as I sit at my desk, typing up my notes, I can still picture the dark shape moving through the water, the ripples it left behind as it disappeared into the depths. And who knows? Maybe one day, I'll return to that remote corner of the world, hoping for another chance to encounter the monster of Lake Tianchi. The sun was setting as I walked through Rendlesham Forest with my best friend Liam. We were both 15, and the forest had always been our favorite place to explore. We were always looking for an adventure, and that evening, we had decided to venture deeper into the woods than we ever had before. The trees were tall and thick, their branches forming a canopy above us, making the forest floor dim and mysterious. Liam and I had heard stories about the Rendlesham Forest for as long as we could remember. Some people said it was haunted. Others whispered about strange creatures that lived there. But we didn't believe in any of that. To us, the forest was just a place to escape from the world, a place where we could let our imaginations run wild. That evening, however, something felt odd. As we walked, and the air grew colder, we pulled our jackets tighter around us, but we didn't turn back. The thrill of the unknown kept us moving forward. The deeper we went, the more tangled the underbrush became. Twisted roots snaked across the path, and thorny bushes seemed to reach out to grab at our clothes. It was as if the forest was trying to keep us out. The trees around us were ancient. The ground was soft and spongy beneath our feet, covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves. In the center, there was a large rock, its surface smooth and worn, as if it had been there for centuries. We stood there for a moment, catching our breath when we heard it, a menacing growl coming from somewhere in the trees. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests. The growl came again, closer this time, and we could feel the vibrations in the ground beneath us. We had no idea what could be making that sound, but it was unlike anything we had ever heard before. It was a deep, like the growl of a large predator, but there was something unnatural about it. We slowly backed away from the rock, our eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. The forest was deathly quiet now, the only sound the blood rushing in our ears. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A flash of movement, a dark shape darting between the trees. It was fast, too fast for us to get a clear look, but I caught a glimpse of something, covered in matted fur, its body low to the ground, moving with an unnatural speed. I grabbed Liam's arm, my voice barely a whisper as I told him what I had seen. His eyes widened in fear, and we both knew we had to get out of there. We turned and ran, our feet pounding the soft earth as we sprinted back the way we had come. The growling followed us, getting louder and more aggressive, as if whatever was out there was chasing us. We didn't dare look back. All we could think about was getting out of the forest, getting back to safety. The trees seemed to close in around us, the path narrowing as we ran. We could feel the creature getting closer. The fear was overwhelming, a cold, paralyzing terror that made it hard to think, hard to breathe. But we kept running, driven by pure instinct, by the need to survive. Finally, we burst out of the trees and into the open field that bordered the forest. We collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. We looked back at the forest, half expecting to see the creature burst out after us, but there was nothing. The forest was still and silent, as if nothing had happened. But we knew better. We had seen something that wasn't supposed to exist. As we sat there, trying to make sense of what had just happened, we remembered the stories we had heard, the stories of the shug monkey. It was an old legend, one we had always dismissed as just that, a legend. People said the shug monkey was a strange creature, part dog, part monkey. It was said to roam the forests at night, hunting anyone who was foolish enough to wander too far into its territory. We had never believed in the shug monkey before, but now, after what we had seen, we weren't so sure. The creature we had encountered in the forest matched the description perfectly. It moved with a speed and agility that no normal animal could possess. The sun had set completely by the time we finally got to our feet. We were still shaken, but the fear was beginning to fade, replaced by a strange sense of wonder. We had gone into the forest looking for an adventure, and we had found one, though not the kind we had expected. Growing up, I always loved exploring the woods near my small town. I spent most of my free time wandering through the woods, looking for animals, and collecting interesting rocks or plants. My friends often told me stories about strange creatures that lived in the woods, but I never believed them. I thought they were just trying to scare me. But one night, something happened that made me question everything. It was a cool autumn evening when I decided to go for a walk in the woods. I had my backpack with me, filled with a flashlight, some snacks, and a small journal where I wrote about my adventures. As I walked deeper into the woods, I noticed how quiet everything was. Usually I could hear birds chirping or the rustle of small animals in the bushes, but that evening, there was nothing. The silence was eerie, but I brushed it off, thinking that maybe the animals were just hiding. As I continued walking, I suddenly felt like I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I stopped in my tracks. I turned around slowly, scanning the area, but I didn't see anything. I told myself it was just my imagination and kept moving forward. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. In fact, it only grew stronger. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. I quickened my pace, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my stomach. The trees seemed to close in around me. I knew these woods well, but in that moment, I felt lost. Just as I was about to turn back and head home, I heard a rustling sound behind me. It was faint, but it was there. I spun around, shining my flashlight in the direction of the noise. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. Maybe it was just a deer, I thought to myself. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I decided to keep walking, hoping to reach the edge of the woods soon. But the rustling sound followed me, growing louder with each step I took. My flashlight began to flicker, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I had never felt so scared in my life. I started to run, my feet crunching on the dry leaves beneath me. Suddenly, I tripped over a root and fell to the ground, my flashlight slipping out of my hand. I scrambled to pick it up, but when I did, the light had gone out completely. My heart raced as I listened to the rustling, which had stopped. I held my breath, straining to hear anything in the silence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. It was a shadow darting between the trees. My blood ran cold as I realized that whatever it was close. I stayed still, hoping that if I didn't move, it wouldn't notice me. But then, I saw it. The creature stepped out from behind a tree. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was about the size of a large dog, but its body was covered in rough, scaly skin. Its eyes were glowing red, and its mouth was filled with sharp teeth that looked like they could tear through anything. It had long, spindly limbs and moved with a strange, jerky motion, as if it wasn't used to being on land. For a moment, I was frozen in fear, unable to move or think. I had heard stories about the chupacabra before, but I never believed they were real. Yet here it was, standing right in front of me. The creature stared at me with its glowing eyes. I knew I had to get away, but my legs felt like they were stuck. The chupacabra took a step towards me, and I finally snapped out of my daze. I turned and ran as fast as I could, not caring where I was going, just wanting to put as much distance between me and the creature as possible. I could hear it chasing after me. I didn't stop running until I was inside my house, with the door locked behind me. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath, my mind racing with what I had just seen. I didn't know if the chupacabra had followed me out of the woods, and I didn't want to find out. I just wanted to be safe. When the first report of mothman sightings reached our small town, no one took it seriously. Rumors spread quickly, but they were treated more like ghost stories, the kind people tell around a campfire to spook each other. No one expected anything to come of it. A shadowy figure, a strange creature with wings. Who really believes that? But as more and more people began to talk about seeing something unusual, the mood shifted. I first heard about the mothman at the local grocery store. Mrs. Gray, the cashier who had worked there for years, mentioned that her neighbor had seen something strange in the sky late at night. It was big and dark, she said, her voice trembling just a little. Bigger than any bird I've ever seen. People around her nodded, listening intently, but I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I didn't believe in such things. I had lived in this town my whole life, and nothing out of the ordinary had ever happened here. But as I left the store and walked home, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was off. The next day, I overheard more people talking about it at the diner. I saw it too, just last night, one man said. It was flying over the trees near the old mill. Another woman chimed in, saying she had seen it from her bedroom window, she whispered, almost as if she were afraid to speak too loudly. The diner fell silent for a moment, and I could tell that everyone was thinking the same thing. What if it was true? What if there really was something out there? I tried to put it out of my mind, but as the days went by, the sightings continued. Every day, more people claimed to have seen the mothman, and each story was eerier than the last. Some said it hovered over the town, watching from the sky. Others said it moved so fast that it was just a blur. But no one had any solid proof. There were no photos or videos, just stories passed from one person to the next. Despite my initial skepticism, I started to feel a growing sense of unease. What if there was something to these sightings? What if the mothman was real? One evening, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the town, but the air felt heavy with anticipation. As I walked, I found myself heading towards the old mill, where one of the sightings had taken place. The mill had been abandoned for years, its once busy machinery now silent and rusting. It was the perfect place for something strange to hide, and I felt a chill as I approached it. I stood by the mill for a while, listening to the sounds of the night. I was just about to turn back when I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whoosh, like the sound of wings beating in the air. And I looked up, scanning the sky for any sign of movement. For a moment, I saw nothing. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something dark and massive swooping down from the sky. My breath caught in my throat as I watched the figure descend. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was large, with broad, leathery wings that stretched out on either side. Its body was shrouded in darkness, and its eyes glowed a deep, fiery red. I stood frozen in place, unable to move as the creature hovered above the mill, its wings beating slowly, almost rhythmically. The Mothman didn't seem to notice me, or if it did, it didn't care. It was focused on something else, something far beyond my understanding. I could feel its presence, a heavy, oppressive energy that seemed to press down on me, making it hard to breathe. I wanted to run, to get as far away from that place as possible, but my legs refused to cooperate. I could only stand there, staring up at the creature in terrified awe. After what felt like an eternity, the Mothman turned and flew off into the night, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. The moment it was gone, I felt the weight lift from my chest, and I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just seen, but there were no logical explanations. The stories were true. The Mothman was real, and I had seen it with my own eyes. When I finally made my way back home, I felt like I was in a daze. Everything felt surreal, as if I were walking through a dream. I wanted to tell someone, to share what I had witnessed, but I knew that no one would believe me. There was no proof, just my word. And in a town full of skeptics, that wasn't enough. But I knew what I had seen, and I couldn't deny it. The Mothman was out there, and it was watching us. Over the next few weeks, the sightings continued, but no one ever captured any solid evidence. The town eventually moved on, and the Mothman became a legend, something to scare the kids with on Halloween. But for those of us who had seen it, the memory never faded. It lingered in the back of our minds. I was working on renovating an old house at the edge of town. The place had been empty for years, and the new owners wanted to bring it back to life. My job was to tear down the walls and rebuild them, but I never expected to find what I did. As I knocked down a section of the wall in the living room, something fell out and hit the floor with a soft thud. I looked down and saw an old photograph, yellowed with age. It was a black and white picture of a family, a man, a woman, and a little girl, standing in front of this very house. They looked happy, but something about the photo gave me chills. I picked it up, and as I did, I felt a cold breeze, even though the windows were shut. The air grew heavy, and the light in the room seemed to dim. I shook off the feeling and set the photo aside, thinking it was just my imagination. Later that day, I went to grab the photograph to show my coworker, but it was gone. I searched everywhere, under the rubble, around the room, even in my toolbox. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. When I told the others, they just shrugged it off, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I had a dream. I saw the family from the photo, but they weren't smiling anymore. Their faces were twisted in fear, and they were reaching out to me, as if begging for help. I woke up in a cold sweat. The next day, I returned to the house, determined to find that photograph. As I tore down more of the walls, I kept expecting it to fall out again, but it never did. Then I noticed something strange. On the wall where I had found the photo, there were scratch marks, like someone had tried to claw their way out. I asked around town, and an old man told me the story of the house. Years ago, the family in the photo had lived there, but one day they disappeared without a trace. The house was searched, but they were never found. Some people said the house was cursed, that the family had been trapped inside its walls, never to be seen again. I don't know if I believe in curses, but after what I experienced, I don't think I'll ever forget that photograph. And every time I walk by that house, I can't help but wonder, are they still there, waiting for someone to find them?